Kelsey, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, 1, 2, 3.
You want the American dream. You want the life, the liberty, the happiness. But until you get there, until you achieve your goals and make your dreams come true, you know what you have. You have the journey, the hustle, the climb. I'm Kelsey Humphreys, and this is The Pursuit. Today you're joining me in Music City. That's right, Nashville, Tennessee. But it could also be called Story City or maybe Publishing City because it's home to some of the big publishers like Turner, Simon & Schuster, and Thomas Nelson, the company responsible for instant classics like No Redneck Left Behind, and He's Gonna Toot, So I'm Gonna Scoot. I'm not making this up, this is real. And the one I can't wait to download myself, Leaking Laughs Between Pampers and Depends. This is real, people. But other Nashville classics you may not be aware of is this is the birthplace of the Seeing Eye Dog and self-serve grocery store concepts, and a media personality you may or may not have heard of. She was going to Tennessee State University and became the first female African-American news anchor, Oprah Winfrey. Now, I'm from Oklahoma, so I feel right at home with the drawl and the horses and all the church folk. And I also feel right at home because half the population, quote, used to be in a band, which we know is code for, my music hopes are dashed, I'm not over it, please don't ask. And we don't. So moving right along, Nashville was named the 5th best city for a young entrepreneur. It was named the most American city last year by AOL and was recently named one of the fastest growing cities in the U.S., which can be attributed partially to today's guest, who relocated here recently from Portland. Now, maybe you're like me and you wrote a little book, a paperback, 25,000 words or something, and you made it to #1 in your category. Well, there's writers like you and me, and then there are real authors. Like today's guest, I am fangirling out, I'm freaking out, I am pumped. Today, I get to talk to Donald Miller. His most recent book, Scary Close, just hit the New York Times bestsellers list, his 3rd book to do that. But you probably know him best from Blue Like Jazz, which was later developed into a major motion picture, which he also co-wrote. The film debuted at South by Southwest and was listed as one of the top 4 movies to get you through your freshman year by USA Today. He has also served on the Presidential Task Force for Fatherhood and Healthy Families, which is so cool, a joint effort between the government and the private sector to rewrite the story of fatherlessness in America. Currently, he helps people live a better story at storylineblog.com and helps leaders grow their businesses at storybrand.com. Don, thank you so much for letting us come to your awesome space and chat today.
Yeah, thanks for coming.
Well, I mean, people are going to just geek out about just getting to see an interview with you at all, but obviously you're a super accomplished writer, everything I just listed, but we want to talk about you as a businessman.
Yeah.
We're here in StoryBrand, and what I think is really cool, when Storyline came out, which I bought right when it came out and went through it and kind of figured out my story, and now what you're doing with businesses, it's kind of like you took your process for writing and then figured out how to make it a program that someone can go through. At least that's kind of my understanding. Yeah. So tell us, how did you take your process and think, oh, this could be a business?
Well, it's funny because I had a little conference company many years ago, and still do, and I had about 350 people coming every year or every 8 months or so to my conference. And I thought that was great. I mean, there were a lot of empty seats in the theater, but I loved standing on stage, delivering the material. People's lives were being changed. So it was just wonderful. And a friend of mine who's in business kind of pulled me aside and said, Don, you've got 350 people coming to your conference, and you've sold millions of books. Why are there so few people coming to your conference? And I just took it as a challenge, and I thought, oh, no. I ended up sitting next to a guy on an airplane not very much long after this, and he was reading one of my books. And so I sat down, I noticed, that never happens to me. I noticed he's reading my book, and I kind of jokingly said, is that a good book? And he looked at me right in the eye and said, it's a great book. It's the 3rd time I've read it. In fact, I'm flying to hear the author speak, and I happen to be flying to speak.
Wow.
And I said, well, you know, I hear the author's kind of a jerk, and he just said, well, I can't imagine, you know. I realized he's not going to get it. But then I've got 2 hours next to a fan who I can ask questions about my brand and all that he knows about me, and he's going to tell me the truth, because as soon as he figures out it's me, he's not going to tell me what's really happening. And what I discovered in that conversation is what I think a lot of business people discover, especially small business people, that he enjoyed my product, if you will. He liked that I was changing his life, all this kind of stuff. But he couldn't articulate what I was doing for him. He didn't have the words to tell other people or even to tell me what it was that he liked so much. And I thought, you know, this is my fault. I'm really great at communicating things in 300 pages, and I'm not very good at summarizing things so that people can spread word. Well, I'd studied story for so many years to be a writer that I actually put together, I put together a 7-part framework on how to tell a better story as a company, as an organization, as a conference. I filtered our communication through that process, and we went from 350 people to selling out a theater of 970. And then we went from 970 to 1,700. We went from 1,700 to 1,800 in Chicago. All of these were sellouts. And then we are now going to 2,400. In 2016, we hope to go to 7,100. That's without spending a dime on marketing. All we did was say, okay, let's actually look at what we're offering from our customer's perspective and make sure that they can understand within just a couple seconds what it is that we have to offer them. When we clarified our communication, which is a process, when we clarified our communication, the business started to grow. Now, I had no intention of being a brand consultant or any of that, but some guys on my staff said, you know, you really should teach this to another business person. So we bought storybrand.com. We didn't have anything on it. It was just sitting empty. But I wanted to take a plumber or a lawyer through the process to see if we could help them. So I changed my Twitter bio to say Don's founder of StoryBrand. Again, making it up as I go. And amazingly, Pantene was the first call, the multi-billion-dollar Procter & Gamble shampoo brand. And I was shaking in my boots, but I went in, explained to them what we did with our little conference. They ended up really using the information to sort of edit and affirm their Queen Latifah Diva with a Big Heart campaign. And that told me we might be onto something. The next call was Ford, who was trying to save Lincoln. And we did a little treatment for them internally. Next call was Chick-fil-A. We've taken all the departments of Chick-fil-A through it. Now we've taken hundreds of billion-dollar brands and small businesses through the process and discovered that if a brand can tell a very clear and compelling story, they engage many more customers. Michael Hyatt went through it, and he quadrupled his revenue on a specific product after going through StoryBrand. So we've kind of discovered that if you communicate really clearly in such a way people understand, they are much more likely to engage your product and buy your product. So now we have a division, and I love it because I get to talk to other business people, which I write books every 4 or 5 years, but every day I've got to wake up and make X amount of dollars and lay somebody off. So I think about business a lot. And it's worked really, really well for our clients, and we're enjoying talking about business, talking about story, helping people increase their revenue.
Wow.
It's just a fun little division of the company.
Little division.
Yeah, a little division that's now 50% of our revenue.
Well, what you just said was a gold mine for me to go through, but I think I would like to note, if you're driving a Lincoln, I hope you caught that. That's thanks to the savior of Lincoln
That's
right
thanks
here,
to some ad
Don
agency,
Miller.
but we sent them a PDF. You know, it's funny, we sent them a PDF saying, essentially, your customer is, here's your customer's problems, and you need to present them as this very masculine character because that's kind of what their identity is looking for. And a year later, Matthew McConaughey's driving around in a Lincoln. I can't stake any claim to that because I think some genius minds came up with that, but sometimes I sit there and wonder, did we send a little PDF that turned into this? I have no idea.
I think so. Well, this is interesting, and it brings up a question from Twitter. Jim asks, how did Don branch off from one business, which was writing your memoirs, to another, StoryBrand, without confusing, your core fans who loved you as a memoir writer? Or was it fluid? How did that work?
Well, it was fluid in real life because what a lot of people don't understand about writing is the writers who really survive, they have to balance the sort of creative life of creating books and writing books, which tends to be sentimental, and you're looking for the magic that is in creativity when you're doing that. However, the publishing company that is publishing your book is in business. And what that means is they have hundreds of employees that they have to pay, and when your book is late or your book doesn't deliver or your book doesn't sell, these wonderful people who I love get laid off. And so now I have to go, okay, if I want a career as a writer, I have to be able to put on my writing hat and be creative and sentimental and all that stuff and live in a cabin for a little while and get this book done. Then I have to leave that and I have to figure out how to sell this book. so that people buy it because this whole thing is operating like a business, and in fact is a business. So those are the two worlds that I've lived in for many years.
You said a few years ago in an interview with Michael Hyatt that you woke up every morning thinking about how to write a better book. So nowadays, when you wake up in the morning, are you splitting your thoughts, or are you thinking about business most of the time?
Yeah,
or?
I try to compartmentalize that. So for instance, this week I'm in the office all week. Next week, my wife happens to be going on a trip, so I'm able to rent a cabin and only work on a book. And so I will switch gears. It takes about 24 hours for me to stop thinking about business and actually start thinking about this new book. However, they're not that far off. I mean, when you're thinking about business, you're really trying to find clarity. You're waking up every day saying, what's profitable? Where am I losing money? Where am I making money? What do I need to focus on? And when you wake up writing a book, you think, what needs to be in this chapter? What's the point of this chapter? How can I get rid of the clutter in this chapter so people don't get confused? It's actually a quite similar process.
Interesting. I love that you actually have a cabin in the woods.
Well,
Like,
I don't
people
own
use
one,
that
but I
as the stereotypical writing, have a cabin in the. Yes, he does go to a cabin in the woods. That's so
works.
funny. So now you went when you first launched. You changed your Twitter bio, and Pantene contacts you.
Yeah.
And you talked about feeling. I heard in another interview you said you felt like a fraud. And I think that is such a big deal right now with even just, social media and expert marketing and, trying to grow personal brands, which is so important these days for everyone. How did you fight through it? How did you fight through what all of us feel, which is, I hope nobody realizes I have no idea what I'm doing?
There's one way to fight through that, and it's very, very important. What you're offering has to work. It just has to work. And when it starts working and you see it working and the results are verified, that's when you gain confidence. And until we find that success for our clients, we are a fraud. And so for me, that had worked for me. Pantene brought me in. I didn't know if it would work for anybody else. So I'm just kind of going, okay, I hope this works. Delivered the presentation, sandwiched between Facebook and Google was my presentation. And, it was very effective and helpful for them. I left with a little more confidence that day. Then we worked with Ford Lincoln, and they really liked what we sent them. Then Chick-fil-A, then the White House called with the president's My Brother's Keeper campaign. And everybody that we were talking to seemed to get a lot out of it. So now when I walk into the room, I don't feel like a fraud at all. But I think that's really important for everybody listening to say, you're going to have to put the wings on the plane as it's going down the runway to some degree. But at some point, this plane's got to fly.
Right.
And when it starts to fly, that's when you know you've got something. And then when it doesn't fly, just keep tweaking until your clients see results from what you're doing and focus on that and keep tweaking and cut everything else out that's not working. That's how you get confidence. You get confidence from, I hate to say it, but you get confidence from winning. You get confidence from helping your clients win. And when it starts working, it starts working. And keep trying until it does.
And clearly, it's working really well. You get the White House calling. You have all of these clients. Now it's time to hire, which for so many creative entrepreneurs, or any entrepreneur, period, like the day you can finally hire someone is like the ultimate. So what was that like to finally, I got to find some staff and I got to hire people?
Yeah, well, I got smart and I hired a coach to help me through that transition. Okay. My assistant of 8 years said, Don, I'm giving you 8 months notice, which was the nicest thing in the world for her to do. And she gave me that notice because she knew she was going to be very difficult to replace. Her name was Tara, and she was really wonderful. But that gave me an opportunity to, Tara was going to go, and she's basically wanted to spend some more time with her kids. For me to say, I think I'm going to be a writer with an assistant, or that's what I've been, a writer with an assistant, but I think I want to own a company. I want to own a conference company before StoryBrand ever got started. That meant I didn't need to replace Tara with an assistant. I needed to replace Tara with somebody who could run my company, and here's why. My coach, my executive coach, really helped me understand what my strengths were and what my liabilities were. My strengths were that I was a visionary, I was very passionate, I was very driven. My liabilities were not terribly interested in details, not going to be around all the time because I'm traveling so much. And so we found this, about a 6-month search, found a guy named Tim Schurer, and I hired Tim to run my company. That was really scary because it was very expensive. In fact, I looked at Tim's salary, what we were going to pay him. We hardly had it in our account. So I was counting on Tim bringing in more money. Hired Tim. Within a short period of time, he was bringing in way more than his salary, and that was fantastic. And then we went through the same thing when we had to hire a designer. I thought, oh, this is going to be really expensive. I hope we can make this work. But the designer ended up bringing in more money for us, and then a customer service person, a full-time writer, an intern program. But every step of the way, it was a crisis point, because you're looking at the money thinking, that money could be mine, but I want to spend it on this person who can make me more. So the two principles really for me were staff your liabilities. And in order to staff your liabilities, you have to know what your weaknesses are. And if you don't know what your weaknesses are, you're going to fail in business because you've got them. And whatever they are, list them, hire somebody to take care of them. And then the second thing, I think every position in a small company as you're growing needs to be a revenue-producing position. Somebody needs to come in, and you can point to the fact that if they do this, they'll bring in this for the company, and then it becomes sustainable. But staff your liabilities, revenue-producing positions only.
Wow.
For the beginning.
He's dropping knowledge bombs, everyone. I hope you're taking notes. So you talked about that first hire with Tim. I can imagine it being so hard to give up creative control.
Yeah.
As a designer, I can't imagine, not designing, and writers not writing once they hire people. So how did you give up that creative control?
Well, I still get to write. I still get to, produce great content, and I love doing that. But now the company's large enough that we need more content than I can produce. And so the rule of thumb for me was hire people who are smarter than you are. And we've done that. We have a wonderful writer. She has the record for the biggest blog we've ever produced, which she reminds me of from time to time that she's clearly beat me.
I would too if I were.
And our customer service guy is amazing. Our designer, our graphic artist is the sort of, everybody's always trying to hire him away from me, which is another problem you get into when you hire really smart people. But these people are producing really wonderful content. And then we also have a collaborative effort. So I'm able to look in and edit where we're going and make sure that we're on script, as we say around here. And so I edit things rather than create things to some degree. But then I've got my own job of creating probably the majority of the content for the company is still created by me.
Okay. So looking back from now where you are, all these employees, your business, and the beginning, your first book, what has been the best and the worst part of the whole experience as an authorpreneur, as I call it?
Yeah, well, the best part, and I think it's what every writer really wants, is just that I get to be heard. And that to me is a blessing and a gift, and I feel lucky and blessed at the same time to be able to just write something and have anybody read it. To me, that's amazing. I think there are some liabilities that come with success. You're always wondering if you can repeat an old success, and so there's that kind of stress. And so I've had to see counselors about how do I not feel like I have to keep winning. And so there's some liabilities, but just the ability to be heard is worth the pursuit. And then you slowly change from being blessed because you get to be heard, and I think part of it, Kelsey, is just getting older, that you get a little more interested in making sure that other people get heard. And what I mean by that is, even though I write from a memoir voice, as every book comes along, I tend to approach it a little more from the perspective of, yes, I'm going to write from my own voice, but what is it that people are dealing with? What are they struggling with? Where are they hurting? What do they need? And you become more and more altruistic as you get older and your identity gets to be established. And so to me, that's the twofold blessing. One, I got to be heard, and two, as I got older and more mature, I got to give other people a voice so that they could be heard. That was that's the daily thing I get to wake up and feel super satisfied about.
And so the worst part, the biggest challenge?
Well, it's hard to say because I don't feel like there's a downside to this job, and I feel like even by speaking it, people are going to roll their eyes and throw their computers across the room. But anybody in small business knows the frustration of having to get up every day and push that cart up the hill. And this thing just is not going to happen without your drive and your passion. And keeping that up is the hardest part. Just keeping something new and fresh and original and beautiful and meaningful on the table at all times is the pressure. But again, there's such an upside to that it's hard to even call it a downside. So it was StoryBrand. We want to create the tools that make that mitigate that pressure and give people the tools they need to get their voice out there.
So when you're not in a cabin in the woods, what is the average day like for Don Miller?
It depends. There's writing days and then there's business days. So on a business day, I come into the office. I have a team that really operates with or without me. And so I join them in their daily activities. There's a morning meeting where we all talk about our priorities. Then I go into my office and I'm usually creating some sort of content. And then I allow myself, within reason, to be interrupted. So I'm usually doing a lunch with somebody or a coffee with somebody every day and trying to help them with whatever they're doing. Writing days are very different. Writing days, I do not let myself be interrupted. I don't turn on my cell phone almost until nighttime. If Betsy is out of town, whenever Betsy goes on a trip or visits family, if she's away, I book time in a cabin. That's a luxury, I know. It's not a luxury financially because these are really ratty, dumpy cabins. They're very cheap. The nicer the place I go to, the less work I get done, so I don't go anywhere nice. But a lot of people can't afford that kind of time. But I really try to compartmentalize and focus and get that work done while I can be creative. And that means I'm up really early and I'm writing until really late. And I write, I go for a walk, I write, I go have lunch, I write, I come back, and I try to keep these 90-minute writing sessions in order. And so 2 completely different kinds of lives there.
So what are your must-have go-to tools that you use every day in both business and writing and personal?
My must-have go-to tools, I would say the main one is there's this framework that we've created, and there's something we call a one-page brand script. And if you're trying to communicate anything, there's one page that I fill out, and that thing saves me a ton of time. And if I just follow the 7-part framework of story brand, I can communicate very, very clearly. It saves me a ton of time. Next is just really practical for any writers who are listening, and it's a piece of software called Scrivener, Scrivener. I think it's $99. I took Microsoft Word off of my computer, put Scrivener on my computer, and made myself learn it. It took about 2 days to figure it out. It wasn't very difficult. But Scrivener allows me to look at my entire book at one glance, where normally I would be scrolling for an hour through Word trying to find where I mentioned something in some chapter. It's a great research tool. You can put on index cards and move them around on a cork board and then turn that into your book, and you can go in and out of things. Scrivener is the tool that I love the most.
If a company is listening and they want to work with you on their brand, which I would, I mean, come on. He saved Lincoln, let's remember.
Oh, I can't claim that. I'm going to get in trouble for that.
How do they find you? How can they reach out to work with you on their brand?
Yeah, storybrand.com. And we have about 30 business leaders who come here to Nashville every month and attend one of our workshops. That's the best thing that you can do. There's also a PDF at storybrand.com called 5 Things Your Website Should Include. We've worked with hundreds of companies. Everybody who comes to the Story Brand Workshop, we actually put their website up on an 85-inch screen and go through it and criticize it. It's really sort of a fun process. But we found there are 5 things that most companies are missing on their website. They're not getting right, and it's costing them a lot of money. So 5 things your website should include at storybrand.com. It's free. Take it. Have fun with it.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you so much for coming here and just, sharing so much great stuff with us today. Okay, that was an amazing interview with Donald Miller. So I want to just pull out a few key takeaways from everything that he said. Number 1, get clear on your brand. That was the first step that took him from a struggling conference company to a major branding consulting firm. So get clear on your message. Number 2, creators who make it have to balance sentimentality and the magic and the creativity with selling and strategy. He applies this throughout the interview to both business and writing. Number 3, fight through feeling like a fraud by results. I know at the beginning we all feel like rookies and like we have no idea what we're doing, but I thought he had the best answer to this question, which is that if you are getting results, if what you offer works, then you don't need to feel like a fraud. And every time you have a win for your client, it makes your confidence grow. And then you feel less and less like a rookie who doesn't know what they're doing. I thought that was an amazing answer. Number 4, hire your liabilities. You have to know your weaknesses, but focus on your strengths. So figure out what those are and then hire out for your weaknesses. And then number 5, hire smarter than you. This is how you can relax in giving up some of the control that you've had since you've been on your own, is that knowing the people that you hire are more than capable. Number 6, hire people who immediately bring in profit. At least this is important at the beginning. He was talking about how everyone that he hired, immediately he could see the results of that investment of that person. Number 7, to grow, you have to let go of some of the control and let go of some of those small things that you've been doing all along. As I said in the previous 2 points, I think he brought it home when he said that he doesn't even know when his own blog posts go live on his own site. Okay, he is not stuck in the trenches, you guys, and you and I have to do the same thing. Number 8, you have to drive the passion and keep yourself inspired in order to get that cart moving uphill every day in your business. And he was saying you have to keep that up yourself, and it's up to you to do it. So you might be looking outwardly for inspiration and motivation, but sometimes we just have to buck up and keep ourselves motivated. Number 9, find the overlap between what is profitable and what you're passionate about. I've talked about this for a long time, and he talked about it in both business and in writing, and I thought it was a great analogy that he gave. Okay guys, it's time for that extra dose of encouragement called If They Can Make It. I want you to imagine how ridiculous it must have sounded when the inventor of doggles said, hey guys, I'm gonna make eyewear for dogs. Well, that company now pulls in about $3 million a year for dog goggles. They have branched off into a lot of dog apparel and even have prescription doggles. I'm not kidding. So if you have a crazy idea for a random product or something you think people out there need, and you've got people in your life who are telling you, I don't think it's gonna happen, just show them doggles and say, if they can make it. Okay, we're gonna play a game called Short Stories. We have 5 words that we can say about the story. We can't say character names, we can't try and give them hints with the title with sounds like or any of that, because since Don is the master of story, we want to try and be concise and get the other person to guess the story, as many as we can in 30 seconds. And so I'm going to go first. Okay, bad guy ends up father.
Bad guy ends up father. No clue.
Okay, let me try again. Outer space, bad guy, father.
Darth Vader, Star Wars. Oh,
Okay.
very good.
Oh. Trial, black guy, white guy.
Ooh, To Kill a Mockingbird? Yes.
Terra, drama, big skirts,
Grease.
south.
Ooh, Gone with the Wind.
Spider, female, children's story.
Ooh, Charlotte's Web?
Dreams inside of dreams.
Inception.
Yeah.
Or Incepted. What is the name of that?
Oh, okay. Ooh,
Oh,
all right.
wow.
Yeah,
Kelsey, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Oh, C.S. Lewis short children's stories.
Chronicles of Narnia.
Title of one of them?
Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Yes, very good. This would be France, Paris. These are, of course, places people live, and there's a story that's happening between them. And it was the best of times, it was the worst of times.
A Tale of Two Cities.
Yes. This is a story about a really deranged wife who is terrorizing her husband.
Gone Girl.
Yes, very good. And this is a elf dwarf guy who's got to destroy this piece of jewelry.
Oh, Lord of the Rings.
Yes, very good. And this
Time.
is, oh, I think you beat me.
I think I did too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
1, 2, 3, 4. Congratulations.
Champion! Because he lost, Don has agreed to give away a copy of Scary Close. So go to thepursuit.tv and apply to get that free copy, and then watch next week to see if you won. Be sure and follow this genius on Twitter, Donald Miller, and then storybrand.com, storylineblog.com, and Instagram and Facebook and all of them. And again, Don, thank you so much. This was so awesome.
My pleasure, my pleasure.
If you'd like to work with Don in person, go to storybrand.com, because almost every single month you can find a workshop where you can attend live and in person with a few other small business owners and work with Don yourself. How awesome would that be? Don is giving away a bundle of PDFs that will help your business along with his newest book, Scary Close. So be sure to go to thepursuit.tv/apply to win. Congratulations to last week's winner, Jordan Fortenboer, who won the New York Times bestselling book and journal from Crystal Payne. Be sure and watch next week as I interview New York Times bestseller, self-published fiction author Jamie McGuire. I'm Kelsey Humphreys. Thank you so much for watching this episode of The Pursuit.